Hi, this is Alex Kantrowitz. I'm the host of Big Technology Podcast, a longtime reporter and an on-air contributor to CNBC. And if you're like me, you're trying to figure out how artificial intelligence is changing the business world and our lives. So each week on Big Technology, I bring on key actors from companies building AI tech and outsiders trying to influence it, asking where this is all going. They come from places like NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon, and plenty more. So if you want to be smart with your wallet, your career choices, in meetings with your colleagues, and at dinner parties, listen to Big Technology Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike, here with Sam. How you doing, Sam?
Hello, I am back in the eastern half of the United States. I'm pretty good. We just came off watching one of the silliest games of all time in a very close loss against the Orlando Magic. We'll talk about it. All in all, was a pretty good weekend, I would say, for the Suns. Won 2 games against Utah and Memphis by large margins, and then this loss against Orlando. So 2-1 overall, not too bad.
A loss against Orlando where in the last game, Orlando gave up the largest run of all time, 31 points, a 31-0 run versus the Orlando Magic, which of course meant they were going to come into this game with a little bit of an edge. Like, unless they're adults, like they have like people on that team that they're not the Washington Wizards. Sorry to the Wizards. They're, Jalen Suggs and Desmond Bane and Paolo Banchero. These are adults. They're going to come out with the chip on their shoulder, and you could feel it in this game. The physicality in the first half was rough.
First of all, I just like the fact that Paolo Banchero is now the third name that you mentioned when listing off good players on the Orlando Magic. Feels kind of...
I said adults. I'm going by age here.
Sure, yeah. Okay, you're talking about adults, but it also just kind of feels symbolic of a team that they are fighting for their lives in the play-in. They have a worse record than us, and I guess you could say we're fighting for our lives in the play-in too. We'll get there, but...
Well, I mean...
Little bit.
The Suns are going to make the play-in.
They absolutely will make the play-in. It's just we'll get to this conversation later. The Clippers are a little bit closer than I'd like at this point. But yeah, this was such a dumb game. We say all the time, this is a perfect example. If this was your first NBA game ever, you would never watch a basketball game again. Tonight was a perfect example of that.
It's 7 p.m. in Phoenix right now, and we're recording immediately after the game. The game started at 4 p.m. This was just way too long, way too many free throws shot. And I do think Dillon Brooks being back, the refs were on edge immediately. There were 76 free throws shot in this game. And they blew the whistle a lot to start the game. The first half took over 90 minutes, and it was just one of those games where, the Suns are going to struggle in a game like this. They struggle when the refs are really, really involved. They're just not big enough, not physical enough on offense to get the refs on their side. Booker can do it. He had 19 free throws in this game after 0. Some may call it the most ethical game of all time. In the last game, he had 19 free throws in this game, ended up with 34 points. But all in all, I would call this a bad Devin Booker game based on the turnovers and the lack of good playing in the first half of the game.
Yeah,
but rough. 115, 111.
34 points, 7 assists, 4 turnovers, to your point. And 16 for 19 from the free throw line. I think there were definitely players who played worse than Booker here for the Suns by a lot. But 24 assists to 20 turnovers overall for the Suns just isn't going to get it done on most nights. And they really got destroyed in the first half, first quarter especially, just turning the ball over again and again. Tons of physicality on both sides, tons of fouls, tons of whining, complaining. This just was not a very fun game to watch. And I do think there is an element also of, Dillon Brooks came back, obviously fired up with a lot of energy, but had 9 points on 13 shots, committed 5 fouls in 22 minutes, and
2 fouls and a technical in the first 90 seconds of the game.
And also took one of the worst shots in a final minute of regulation that I've ever seen, literally behind the backboard with 30 seconds left to try and tie the game, or maybe not tie the game, but try and get it within one. There is a real ironing out that the Suns are going to have to figure out. Jalen Green, first of all, didn't close this game, but there's a real ironing out that the Suns have to figure out because Devin Booker, Jalen Green, and Dillon Brooks still have not logged that many minutes, all three together at once. Mm-hmm. And having a real offense when all three of those guys play, with the amount of tunnel vision that there can be, poses a challenge, I would say, both in the short, intermediate, and potentially long term for them, right? Mm-hmm. Jalen Green and Dillon Brooks is a lot of tunnel vision. Booker at times too. Though he clearly is most likely to play make out of the three of those guys. But like Dillon Brooks and Jalen Green had 23 combined shots and 2 assists. So that's tough. I really just felt like the Magic are not a very good offensive team even still, but they were just the team taking the open shots towards the end of the game. Mm-hmm. And the Suns, everything was hard.
38 minutes total, it looks like, they played before this game. Those three on the floor together. And yeah, they really need to figure it out. The real story of this game was supposed to be that Dillon Brooks was back, of course, which we talked about. He didn't really have a great game in this one. But you're right. They do have a lot to figure out. This one, Jalen Green did sit towards the end of the game, but he was playing pretty poorly before that. Now, you can argue about how short the leash should be with Jordan Ott and these guys, and should he give them more of an opportunity to find their way out of this mess. And I think you could make that case, but 0 for 5 from 3 and 4 turnovers for Jalen Green is a little bit tough. Like, you really need guys, when you're trying to climb your way back into a game, you need guys to hit shots. But in this game, he wasn't the only one that was cold. I mean, 2 for 6 from Devin Booker from 3, which is not, that's like Booker. That's who he is now. Grayson Allen, I believe, was like 1 for 9 at one point, and then ended 2 for 10 in this game.
Finished 2 for 10. I want to give Grayson a shout out. Although I did cut you off. Who else? Were you talking about?
Mostly it was just those guys. Rasheer Fleming was 1 for 5. Like, I don't know how much you can expect out of Rasheer Fleming. We'll talk about him. They gave him a lot of chances to do interesting stuff in this game. Yep. And then Colin finished 2 for 6 too, which Colin has been off lately, but at least hit 2 in this one.
I'm actually kind of surprised looking at the box score that Rasheer was still only at 16 minutes. Felt like he played a lot more, but maybe that's just because of the second half. They did give him lots of small ball opportunities after Oso had 5 fouls. This was a game where Kaman Malawach played 3 minutes. That's something I suppose we could talk about too. I do want to give Grayson a shout out just because even in a game like this, he was ice cold and fouled out. And he still hit 10 points. Remember how I said a few weeks ago, Grayson's been in and out of the lineup. He still has not scored less than 10 points since January 5th. He's only scored fewer than 10 points twice this entire season. And if it's going to take him 14 shots to get there and he's going to be a streaky shooter, he's going to get there. There's also been games this month, I think one of the Toronto games, where it's like, 3's not falling for you? Okay, I'll get to the free throw line 8, 9, 10 times. He's done that a few times. So just, not the best game for Grayson by any means. The previous 2 games this weekend were much better. But he continues to maintain the double-digit streak, which is fun for me.
Yeah, I give him a lot of credit for playing through this, but like it's not just trying to iron things out with Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, and Devin Booker on the floor. They really have to figure out who's going to play at the end of these games too. They haven't had a lot of opportunities with all of these guys healthy, so it's tough to really point it out. But they did go like 4 minutes without a single field goal in the fourth quarter of this game, and they had guys in there that should be able to hit shots. Of course, they had Devin Booker in there. They had Grayson Allen in there. Jordan Goodwin, we can talk about him too in more detail, but Jordan Goodwin was in there too. He wasn't terrible in this game. He finished 2 for 8, but I thought the stuff he was doing defensively was so important for their ability to stay in the game.
I thought he was their second best player in this game. Maybe Royce, their second best player, just because of the open threes he hit. At the worst, Jordan Goodwin was their third best player in this game. Right. Since you brought his name up, Jordan Goodwin's been incredible this week.
Yeah.
In the Utah game, in the Memphis game, he was maybe not like the main culprit of every positive thing that happened for the Suns on the court, right? In both those games, he probably also had 6 or 8 points or whatever. But every time they went on a run, he was there. He was always there. And he was like a plus 13 in one of those games, a plus 22 in the other one. He was a plus 2 tonight in a loss. He's grabbed a ton of offensive rebounds over the past week. He is making the majority of his threes. It's weird because it feels often like Jordan Goodwin should be one of those 5 players who's closing games. And that's just insane because, you know, it also feels like Booker and maybe Jalen Green and maybe Colin Gillespie need to be in there. And like you just can't have Jordan Goodwin actually be the power forward once it gets to the playoffs. But that's how well he's been playing lately.
He was almost, there were minutes where he was basically a center tonight because it was him and Royce were the 2 tallest guys on the floor for a few possessions. And that's just the stuff that is asked of him is really difficult. And, you know, like, I guess you could make the case, should Rasheer have gotten more of those minutes? Should Kaman have gotten some of those minutes as well? And, you know, maybe you're right. You know, I didn't think Kaman looked bad in the minutes he had. He had 2 blocks in 3 minutes. One of them was a crazy chase down block that he had in the first quarter. So I was kind of surprised that he sat so much. I will say the run that they went on, the initial run to get them back into the game, was with Rasheer Fleming at center as a small ball center. So I could see the logic in that with a team the way Orlando is playing, with the size and the length that they have, spreading the floor out as much as possible, trying to play 5-out lineups is something that they're going to try to have to do against big teams like this. You know,
I think they saw the way Jordan Goodwin was playing, the way Rasheer Fleming was playing, and sort of just said, Orlando obviously goes with a traditional backup center in Goga Batazde. And Ott was just like, we're kind of out rebounding them anyway, so might as well just take the extra switchability and space on offense if that's going to be the case. Like, if you can keep pace with a traditional big man unit in terms of rebounds, then what are you really gaining by playing Malawach, is I think what he was thinking. But I do also think that Malawach has been quite good over the past couple weeks. In fact, up until tonight, where he was a -4 in 3 minutes, which I don't think is exactly a fair sample to judge him by. Up until tonight, he had registered a positive plus-minus in the box score 6 games in a row, even though the Suns were just 3-3 in their last 6 games. Malawach was a positive in all 6 of those games. So
yeah, he deserves a lot of credit for that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's come a long way.
It is a thing with him where I've said it to you before. I just want to see him not be a negative. And I meant that not necessarily in the traditional plus minus sense, but just like looking like somebody who's making them worse. And that's step 1 for him, right? It is baby steps for someone as young as him. And yeah, step 1 complete. I think he's out there. He looks like he belongs. He looks like an NBA player, and he's using his size to his advantage. He's also doing a great job just hustling in general. You know, that was a big thing to start the season. When they had all 3 bigs that were playing, Mark Williams constantly hustled, and it's just such a benefit, opening up 3-point shots for guys when he's on the floor so often. And then Oso Ighodaro, we all know his benefits, although I do think he's had a couple of rough games here recently. This was not his best. But we know what Oso provides. So when Malawach was out there originally, if he wasn't hustling, it stood out because you get so used to what these guys can do. Oso Ighodaro can switch, and Mark Williams sprints down the floor, both ends of the floor. And now Kaman Malawach has figured out that that's something that he can do to benefit the team as well. And he's doing it more consistently. And that type of thing is going to be really helpful for him. It's going to get him easy buckets once in a while. We know with Mark Williams, it's not that often. More often than not, they're going to take a 3 when you're bringing the defense into the rim. But it will occasionally get him those buckets. And then defensively, just like today, he had a chase down block because he was willing to hustle on the defensive end. The first guy that needs to be down there ideally is someone who can protect the rim. It's the hardest for them to get down there, but you know, today he did it, and he's been really attempting to do that.
There's been no concrete update on Mark Williams, correct?
It doesn't
Did I miss
seem
something?
like it, no. Yeah.
Okay, so if that's the case, I mean, look, if we're operating under the assumption that Mark's still going to be back before the playoffs or the play-in, that will, when it happens, effectively end man season. At least we saw a stretch where, like, it's clear that he can give you some actual minutes, and it's clear that he can contribute to winning. And really, he had a very good March in a number of ways. I marked down that from October to January, which is a long time range, but that's because he basically was never getting into games, so it was 4 months. From October to January, Malawacz was averaging 1 turnover per every 9 minutes played, so 4 turnovers per 36. In March, that was 1 turnover per 18 minutes played, cut his rate in half. From October to January, he was doing 1 foul every 5 minutes, which implies fouling out in 30 minutes. In March, 1 foul every 12 minutes.
Yeah.
More than half. Cut the rate in more than half. So way fewer junk offensive fouls, illegal screens, way fewer turnovers. You know, the raw stats, the volume or whatever, might be like 5 points and 5 rebounds and not look that impressive, but you dig under that a little bit and he's hustling. There is efficiency behind his numbers. Here's a huge one. That man protects the rim like crazy. Have you looked at the rim protection numbers for Malawacz this season?
No, I haven't. I imagine it's great because even when they get a shot up and over him, it has to go up and over him.
So
it's difficult.
Here's some context, and then I'll ask you to guess. We know that Mark Williams, I looked these numbers up today, Mark Williams is allowing 65% shooting inside of 6 feet. That's very bad.
Very bad.
Oso is allowing 58%. That's slightly above league average. League average is like 61, 62, I think. So Oso's at 58%.
So that's gotten worse too. Yeah. Okay.
Where do you think, and it's a smaller sample size because he plays fewer minutes, but what do you think Kaman Malawacz is allowing opponents to shoot inside 6 feet?
55 maybe, I'm guessing.
42. So
it's pretty crazy.
50 is like nearing defensive player of the year, your Rudy Gobert's, your Wemby's usually even better than that, so not him, but let's say your Gobert's, right? Your Jaren Jackson Jr.'s, you're like close to defensive player of the year if you do a full season at 50%. 42% inside of 6 feet is fucking nuts, and there's no way it would stay like that, I don't think, if Malawacz played a full season against starting big men all the time and starting guards all the time.
29 minutes a game or whatever, yeah.
Exactly.
Like
Who would
12,
be the ones challenging him? But for him to be able to post those numbers in even 14 or 15 minutes is crazy. That's really good. It's really good. That's like real tangible impact in year one. Which I think, goes beyond the total redshirt season that a lot of people were expecting of him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's really come on lately and played really well. And so has Fleming, by the way, who was 4 for 9 in this game. Like I said, 1 for 5 from 3, 11 points, but, spent a lot of time at center in this game because of the Oso Ighodaro foul trouble and, the lack of faith in Kaman Malawacz in this particular matchup, which I'm sure there's like some sort of film evidence of playing a small ball center against this team, which is why Jordan Ott did it. I haven't watched enough of the Magic to understand what prompted that decision. But Fleming has done a good job lately. It's interesting to see him, basically flow in and out of, I'm off ball, I'm standing in the corner because I'm at forward, and I'm just going to stand here for the entire possession and shoot when I catch it. Then all of a sudden he's center, and he's just in the middle of the floor. He's catching it, he's pitching it to guys, he's setting a ton of screens, he's rolling, he's popping. He's trying to do it all there. The 3 from the top of the key really has to start dropping for those really small ball center minutes to really work and really pop with Rasheer Fleming, because when you're setting screens, you're just not going to get the corner 3, right? You're only going to get, if you're popping, you're only going to get the 3 from the top of the key. And if you can start setting screens and popping out to the top and hitting that at like 35% or whatever, that'd be really great for him. He's shooting well from the corners so far this year. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I've looked him up recently, and he's doing well on the corners so far. I can't imagine he's made a ton of threes at the top of the key. But to sort of hold his own defensively in those minutes, they did not rebound well, I'll say that. They kind of lucked out from some missed opportunities. Of course, they lost the game regardless, but, he is doing a good job trying to get those rebounds, but when you play that small, you're just going to give up a lot of rebounds no matter what, especially with both Paolo and Wendell Carter Jr. on the floor at the same time.
37% from the corners for Rasheer. That I don't have the numbers in front of me, but probably like 30-ish above the break, maybe even a little less.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's why it's so surprising. I mean, him and Dunn, I posted about it again. Their net rating increased again. And did Ryan Dunn play in this game? I just noticed that Ryan Dunn wasn't injured tonight, was he?
I don't think so.
It was a DNP CD. He just didn't play.
Interesting. He was so good in the last few games too.
He
really
was.
Great in the Toronto game that we were at, and then played well both in Utah and Memphis. Based on my memory.
Memphis especially was Ryan Dunn, Jordan Goodwin, and Rasheer Fleming entered the game and just dogged it up. And then, they let Memphis just hang around the entire game. And then at a certain point at the start of the fourth quarter, they were just like, enough is enough. And so I'm kind of surprised that neither of us really noticed until just now. I don't know. I mean, I guess Dylan Brooks entering the lineup just means, someone had to lose minutes. And Jordan Goodwin was really good, so it makes sense that he still played 29. It's just interesting. Because, those Rasheer Fleming and Ryan Dunn minutes together continues to be like a plus 18 net rating. And it's just their defense. It's like their offensive rating should not be as good as it is, but I guess if you can turn the other team over enough and create some transition buckets, then anything is possible.
If you care about coffee and how it's made, check out Alchemy Roast. They roast in small batches and source their beans responsibly, focusing on flavor instead of mass production. The result is coffee that's balanced, well-developed, and easy to drink, whether you brew at home every day or just want something better than grocery store coffee. You can order online at alchemyroaster.com, and if you use the promo code TIMELINE at checkout, you'll get 10% off your order. Go now to alchemyroaster.com, my favorite coffee, and use the promo code TIMELINE at checkout. Get 10% off, support a local Phoenix business, and get the best coffee you can buy.
Big thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp, for partnering with us for this important conversation about mental health.
This is Steve Smith here, former NFL wide receiver and host of the 89 show on YouTube. So having a counselor and working with BetterHelp, that gives you an opportunity to really start to unpack. But people don't understand, when you unpack things, you also open up a box that you're not always sure what's inside. So I think that's why seeing a professional is extremely important. If you need someone to open up to, visit BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/89 to get started.
Do you love rom-coms? Do you wish you could talk about Christmas movies year-round? Then we have the perfect podcast for you, Hallmarkies Podcast. Throughout the year, we cover all things romance, holiday, and Hallmark, including recaps of every Hallmark show, like When Calls the Heart and The Way Home. You can also get loads of bonus content covering shows like Bridgerton, Sweet Magnolias, and Just Like That. We are an all-female group of friends who are passionate for these shows and movies and give our honest opinions as well as gush over what we love so much. But that's not all. Every Monday, there are interviews with all your favorite actors, writers, directors, and more. Check out Hallmarkies Podcast on all your podcast providers and on YouTube. That's Hallmarkies Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts.
I want to talk to you about Jalen Green. Jalen Green today played his 20th game in a row. For the first time this season, he got up to like a significant amount of games played, of course, because he was injured so much to start the season. So I just want to take this as an opportunity to sort of give our opinions on the Jalen Green experience. This was not a good game for him, this game against Orlando. He just struggled in this game. But on the season, he's averaging 18 points per game, 2.9 assists, which is low for him. He actually can average more than that. Usually he's above 3. Not much above 3, but above 3. 3.8 rebounds, 2.1 turnovers per game, shooting almost 42% from the field, 32% from 3, 74% from the free throw line. Some of those numbers really are brought down by his first few games back from injury where he couldn't hit a single shot. But honestly, they've sort of stabilized recently. That's not much different, I think, than what we're going to get from him for the rest of the season. I guess we'll see. Maybe he can shoot a little bit better. He's currently shooting 48% from the mid-range. So weirdly great in the mid-range, almost entirely off of self-created shots, of course. One of those shots that we expected to want him to never shoot, he's actually making it probably one of the more efficient shots for him so far this year. And only shooting 57% at the rim, which is not good, as we talked about for rim protection stats. Like that's, any random opponent on average, on aggregate, is shooting 60+% against Mark Williams. So just for context, Jalen Green only 57% at the rim so far. Now, having said all that, those stats are not great. I mean, the 18 points is good, but like the efficiency is not good. The assists are low. The turnovers are high. I actually thought he played pretty well in the previous 4 or 5 games previous to this Orlando game. And I started to see something sort of click with him where he was playing within the flow of the offense a little bit more. Much, much fewer isolations, more efficient basketball, better shots off the ball. But this game, it did not quite click. Overall, how do you feel about the Jalen Green experience so far? He's played about 27 games total.
Yeah, it's definitely a roller coaster. I think we've seen a lot of the negatives rear their head, and we've seen some of the positives as well. Interestingly enough, you talk about the fact that he's shooting so well from mid-range and not shooting well at the rim. But and that's true, okay. But like, would you rather have 10 layups at 57% or 10 difficult self-created 16-footers at 48%?
Of course,
is what I come back to. So recently, I feel like his process has been pretty good in that I don't feel like he's settling for a ton of those mid-range shots. I feel like he's mostly taking threes or trying to get to the rim. The tunnel vision is going to continue to be a thing. And then I'm not even sure if you mentioned anything about defense there, but defensively, I think it's been really interesting with Jalen because he actually has been quite engaged on the ball. He's been playing the passing lanes more recently. He gets out, has these really flashy dunks that are a lot of fun when he does that. And yet at the same time, the transition defense for the overall team is just noticeably worse every time he's in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a give and take with him. And I don't really know where that leaves us. I don't think it leaves us at, what does he make? A $30 million player, $35 million player or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I also don't think it leaves us at someone who is entirely not valuable and can't contribute to a playoff team at all is kind of how I feel.
Yeah, it's well, I have a couple ways I want to go with this. I will say, just to point out some things about Jalen Green, I do think that his rebounding has been pretty good for his size. It's only 3.8 rebounds per game. He's averaged more in his career, but has played more minutes in previous seasons as well. He's not had a ton of minutes per game so far this year. But occasionally he'll just sky for a rebound in a way that I'm like, man, this guy can really get up and get rebounds that are sort of outside of most players' catch radius. And it's nice to see he can sort of create extra possessions based on that, defensive or offensive. Those can be really helpful if he can occasionally get rebounds. The Suns don't have, well, thanks to Jordan Goodwin they do, but they don't have a lot of other players that are great rebounders at their position outside of Mark Williams and Jordan Goodwin, really. Everyone else is sort of okay. They do chase, they do fight for rebounds, so they do a good job overall, but I wouldn't call any of them excellent rebounders outside of Jordan Goodwin and Mark Williams. I guess the first place I want to talk about with Jalen is the future of this team has Devin Booker on it. That's like the only thing we know for certain, right? Unless he somehow changes his mind, but he's given no indication he ever will. The Suns have given no indication that they're ever going to trade him. They've given him every extension at every opportunity they can give him with the most money they can possibly offer him. He's the future of this team. The question will be, what is that guy next to him? How can that guy fit next to Devin Booker? And I guess how I want to talk about this conversation with Jalen Green is, I actually think he's played at times better than I expected, at times worse than I expected. So it's just a mixed bag with him, and maybe that's who he is. Like, it's an aggregation of all those things together. But after watching him play, after seeing what he can do you see a world where this is the guy that's sort of the second option next to Devin Booker in a way that makes sense for you, in a way that makes you feel comfortable for this team?
Do I see a world? I would always be careful about like ruling it out entirely, right? Like, I see a world where it happens.
Okay, I guess a better way to word it is, do you feel more or less confident after watching all of these games than you did when you started the season, which I would say was not that confident?
Yeah, my expectations for Jalen were never especially high, and I would say they continue to be not especially high in terms of his ability to be a long-term number 2 option on a playoff team. I think what's so interesting about the way that the Suns have developed this year, as I watch them, is none of us expected this type of season from Dillon Brooks, who again was very bad tonight, but was coming back from injury and has had a 20-point per game season where he's been this really effective one-on-one isolation scorer. It's especially difficult now to reconcile like a long-term future, I think, with both of those guys sharing the floor for a lot of minutes for me. That's just my like first observation. It doesn't mean that like it's a fact or anything. They could be fine. They could play the next 5 seasons together and look great, but you're taking so many difficult shots between the two of those guys with so few assists. It really puts a lot of pressure on, obviously, whoever the number 1 is. The number 1 in this case is Booker, or a lot of pressure on like a Mark Williams type figure to hold down the paint in a way that, I like Mark Williams too, but I don't really think he's had that type of season either to give us a ton of confidence in his ability to be like a 20 and 10 big or whatever in the future.
I would call him a below average starting center.
Yeah.
That's what he's played. I mean, he could get better. He's young, but that's what he played at so far this season.
It's just difficult with Jalen because he skies so high. He jumps out of the gym, and just like it would be so much easier to see it if he was 6'7", but he's 6'4", and I don't know. You're putting me in a difficult position to have to answer this question.
I mean,
I'll
talk about it.
I will say.
Yeah, I'll talk about it from my perspective. It's tough for me too, and I think what is interesting when I think about it is, in many ways, I'm trying to figure out how the Suns feel about it. Like, what do they really think? If you could get some of that truth serum in them, if you will, if you get them a little drunk at a bar, right? How do they really feel about Jalen Green? And there's one thing that I think is kind of telling. They continue to start calling Gillespie. Today would have been the day that maybe they didn't, right?
Yeah, it's a good point. Colin, we haven't even really talked about, but hit a huge wall this month and has really struggled with his shot. Although
he missed 21 in a row.
He did perk up at the very end of the Memphis game, but like he had a really bad game against Utah and a pretty damn bad game against Memphis too. So absolutely, I hadn't really thought about it, but this would have been the game to not start him.
Not just that, Dillon Brooks was back.
Yeah.
So you have the opportunity to play a little bit bigger. You could have done Jalen Green, Devin Booker, Royce O'Neal, Dillon Brooks, and Oso Ighodaro, or you could have done, some other version of that. But to me, what they're saying is what Jalen Green provides is not enough playmaking. And so I guess I approach the thought process as, what would it take to make this work? And it really would take Jalen Green would almost have to become the third option in order for it to work really well. They would need another player, ideally a forward, that could create for themselves and for others. And then Jalen Green and Devin Booker could sort of play off of that a little bit more. And it's really difficult to envision something like that working. I've brought up Julius Randle many times to you, probably more when you were here in person than I have on the podcast, as like a guy who could just theoretically, that skill set I think would work on this team, in that you take Colin Gillespie out of the starting lineup, but you put somebody in there that can still average 6 assists a game. And, you find ways to create shots, easier shots for guys outside of that. And it's like, well, what would that take to give up? Now you're talking about potentially giving up Grayson Allen. You're talking about potentially giving up Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal, or Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, and Rasheer Fleming to try to get an actual star level player, or or a first round pick. And that's where it becomes really difficult for me to envision how this team could not only give up all of those players, but also somehow cobble together lineups that could be good after that. And it just becomes really difficult for me to conceptualize now. But the part of the problem with that is, with Jalen Green, is if Jalen Green's not part of the future for this team, what is his value on the trade market? And that's something that we're going to have to get into, of course, when the offseason comes. Because I one thing I know for sure, Jordan Ott loves Colin Gillespie. He wants to keep starting him. And you can't start 3 guards like that long term. You can't. It's not going to work. Like, you need to find a way to add some more size to this team if you want to see them get to another level. You can't continue to play tiny ball.
Maybe if the third guard was Jordan Goodwin to open next season, they'd be okay.
I mean, that's a power forward as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. I mean, I've said it before. I would just start Jordan Goodwin. I've been saying that for months. But yeah, so like, I don't know. It's just something I've been grappling with. I thought this would be a good opportunity to really talk about it. And this is all to say too, by the way, Jalen Green's had some great games recently. Some great games where he's scoring well, he's scoring efficiently, and he's doing it within the flow of the offense. He's attempting to play good defense. He does, like you said, the transition defense is not good. He occasionally falls asleep or misses a rotation. There was an interesting moment in the game today, in fact, where he missed a rotation. Dillon Brooks was held, so they called an offensive foul anyway, but immediately when the whistle was blown, Dillon Brooks was screaming at Jalen Green for the missed rotation. And, that's kind of what you miss from Jalen Green. He's going to hold guys accountable when they make mistakes when he's out there on the floor, or from Dillon Brooks, I should say. So he's attempting to play good defense. I don't think there's a ton of possessions where he's really awful, but they are playing with a deficit of size so often. And unless he somehow, it's really the assists, man. If it was 5 assists instead of 3, or 6 assists instead of 3, it really would help this team out a lot. But he does not create a ton of easy shots for other guys, and that's what makes it hard.
or even a higher percentage at the rim. I wanted to have a Devin Booker mini conversation too, just to talk about Mickey March as it's been dubbed for kind of that time period of the season where guys just take over because you're playing, in some cases, lesser competition. Well, no, we can just say it. Usually because you're playing lesser competition and tanking teams and whatever. But Devin Booker has really taken advantage in this time, because in the month of March, he's averaged 28.5 points per game, 31 points per 36 on 59% true shooting. In particular, what I think has been so interesting about Booker's March, maybe we saw a little bit less of, we saw a lot of free throws tonight, but it was a little bit different from the Jazz and Grizzlies game. We're starting to kind of see Uncle Booker come out with the old man strength. You know what I mean? Like
100%.
Like, it's good, first of all, to see that his 3-point shooting is trending up as the season goes on. He's up to like 32 point something on the season after just being under 30 for a while, like by far his worst shooting season of his career. But in addition to that, the paint touches for him over the past month has really gone up, and his ability to drive the ball and then kick out and create for others. And he's a really strong player for a guy like, for his size. For a guy like Jalen, his ability to get to the rim is he's probably one of the he's one of the weaker, if not weakest, players in the NBA. Is that fair to say? Jalen Green's like 170 pounds or 175 pounds, right? So his ability to get to the rim is entirely contingent on his speed. And maybe if he can develop it, a little bit of shifting gears, a little deceleration that he can throw in there as well, which I think is like often, what he's missing. But like that's what it takes to get to the next level in terms of playmaking, right? We need to see sustained effort to touch the paint and then also kick out. And Booker's gotten so good at that throughout the years. And he also, by the time he was Jalen's age in season number 5, he was pretty damn good at it already. And Jalen still has a long way to go, which is the concerning part.
I tweeted something today about Devin Booker. And this is a stat, once again, previous to the game. Tough to immediately record after the game. The stats haven't quite updated, so we can't talk more specifically about the stats post the game. But Devin Booker's now at the second best on-off differential of his career at +7. And for the first time of his career, which we mentioned on the podcast before, the defense is better with him on the floor instead of worse. Throughout his career, the defense has at times been much worse, but, the last few seasons been like 1 or 2 points per 100 possessions worse, but the offense will get significantly better in that time. But, it's one of those things where, like, this is cool, right? And it's good evidence that Devin Booker's good at basketball, not that we needed more. But the Suns were better when that gap was smaller. Because to start the season, and throughout the first 30, 40, 50 games of the season when they were healthy and Dillon Brooks was playing and Colin Gillespie was out of his mind, they were pretty good with him not on the floor. And that's what helped them win so many games in the first, 50 games of the season. Now they really kind of live and die with him on the floor for the last 15 or so games, it feels like, where they just need every scrap out of him that they could possibly get in order for them to be good. Now we can debate on why that is. I think part of it is health, right? They're missing Dylan Brooks. They're missing Mark Williams. Grayson Allen has been in and out of the lineup throughout that time. They just need guys to play a little bit more in order to be what they were before that. But I also think other guys have struggled in the roles that they're being asked to do. Oso Ighodaro has not quite been the guy that he was when he was coming off the bench. That's his natural role. He really needs to get back to that whenever Mark Williams is healthy once again. Colin Gillespie needs to hit shots. I mean, like, a lot of why they were good without Devin Booker on the floor is Colin would just hit 3 threes in a row, like in the second quarter. And that really swung a game. And if he's not doing that, you can't swing the games the same way. So, I look at those stats and I'm like, this is great. Devin Booker really is important to this team, but it sure would be nice if they were a little bit better without him on the floor. And like Jalen, you want that to be Jalen Green, right? You want him to be the guy that's sustaining those minutes and being a big scorer. And at times he can do that, but it has not really come consistently enough for the Suns to win some games that I think, like today, they should have won today. There's been the Milwaukee game recently. There's been games recently. The Nuggets game is tough to say because they really did everything they could to win that one. But there have been games recently that they probably should have won, and they weren't.
So Green without Booker, you made me pull up the Data Baller stats right now. Green without Booker is up to 288 minutes and a 112 offensive rating, which is so much better, if you'll remember, than it was like 15 games ago, but is a negative 0.01. It's basically flat. The offense, ideally with Jalen on the floor, even if Booker's off, I think still needs to be like, you can't just be trading baskets. It needs to be like a slight positive, and a lot of that comes from Jalen's ability to fire on all cylinders with the rest of the guys he's out there with on defense, but also a lot of it is just his ability to get everyone involved on offense and not just rely on the streakiness of his own game. I think we've seen by far enough evidence that when those two guys are playing off of each other on offense, Book and Jalen, they actually they have so much talent that it just works. The stats show that it works, and just watching it works. But when it's just one guy without the other, specifically when it's Green without Booker, you're right. The playmaking lags and leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah, and you're missing a lot of that Colin Gillespie handling the ball, which, you could make the case that he shouldn't be doing that because he's been playing poorly, or you could make the case that part of the reason he's playing poorly is because his role has changed so dramatically playing with Jalen Green. I don't know what's true in that.
The thing I go back and forth on, though, is as we talk about like Jalen's future with the Suns, even if we're a little bit disappointed with how those minutes look when Jalen is playing without Book, 20 points is still 20 points, someone needs to carry the offense in that time. And the idea of just replacing him with anyone doesn't necessarily...
Expansion draft, you mean?
I wasn't even thinking about that.
Yeah.
But, it's... the idea behind Jalen to me, and kind of the idea, if you want to picture him as a future supercharged sixth man or whatever, if that's your preferred role for him, the idea of any one of those guys is you're preventing the offense from bottoming out, because there's a real bottom that can be achieved when you literally are just playing Jordan Goodwin and Haywood Highsmith and Amir Coffey all together. When you just are putting role players who can't dribble or shoot the damn ball together, and that's what Jalen allows you to do. I still think there's a higher version of what he's shown us that he can achieve, and a higher ceiling. And no doubt there are frustrations to be had, particularly because, to go back to what I said 20 minutes ago, he's just not playing like a $35 million a year player. But that type of player is needed on every NBA bench in the league, right? It can't just be a bunch of high grit, all defense, no offense role players, and then one star player who can dribble the ball like Devin Booker. That's not how team building works either. So, that's why this is it's a conversation that really does require a lot of nuance. That nuance is difficult to have on Twitter. Of course, I've thrown out some inflammatory things on Twitter already because that's just who I am. But I like to think. What'd you say?
That's what Twitter's for.
I like to think that the version of us who discusses this sort of stuff, like on the podcast, or the people who choose to listen to the full hour-long podcast, are understanding that we're grappling with it a little bit harder here.
Yeah, some might say nuance is for podcasts. 2 more things, and then we'll talk about Amari. Who do you? I guess it's a 2-part question for this. Who do you start in the next game, and then who do you start when Mark Williams is back?
Well, who do they play in the next game? First of all, I knew this, but I forgot.
I believe it's Charlotte. Yeah.
Okay. I guess that doesn't matter then. Let's see. Gillespie, Booker, Jalen. I mean, just the
You're
same
starting with
5.
those 3? Okay. Brooks and Oso then.
It's just the same 5, I guess.
I think I would take Gillespie out of there and put Royce in there.
Actually, you know what? I don't mind that. The difficulty is I think this becomes so much easier when Mark is back, because Oso and Colin playing together, the reason it continues to happen in the starting lineup is I think Ott is just like, that's an automatic 3 handoff threes per game.
Yep, that's exactly why I asked it that way.
It's an automatic
it
9
becomes
points
easier.
a game.
You bring Colin off the bench when Mark is in there. It's a weird thing to say, but you bring Colin off the bench when Mark is in the lineup, and you put Royce or Grayson in there. Yeah.
So with Mark, when Mark comes back, it's Book, Jalen, Royce, Dylan, Mark. And then off the bench, you have Colin and Goodwin and Oso and I guess Fleming and maybe Dunn. And the bench just has a better net rating than the starters. Maybe.
So, yeah, I mean, it's that could work, right? Because then Devin Booker can prop up the starters, and then the bench could actually help you, just like I talked about. Whereas, I will say the numbers for Brooks and Royce sharing the court so far this year are not exciting. If you look them up, you're going to say, why are they suggesting this? But there hasn't been a ton of that with Jalen Green, and I'm not sure if that helps or hurts, but I do think that Royce's shooting in particular would have helped today with the way that Orlando was playing the Suns, which is just crowding Devin Booker every time he took a step beyond the three-point line. So the minutes with Royce were the best minutes that they played, and having that in the starting lineup I think would have helped. And then last question, or just a quick update on where the Suns are at. 42-34, by the way, will finish the season above 500 even if they lose every game, so we have that going for us. The Clippers are 39-36. They're 2 games back in the loss column of the Suns. This is, by the way, Justin Russo, who covers the Clippers, tweets this out, so I use his Twitter account to get the update. They split the season series 2-2. They could tie in a record. The tiebreaker is division record. The Suns are 10-6 in the division. The Clippers are 8-6.
Okay.
The Clippers play Sacramento and Golden State. So if they do both of those, they tie the division record. But
the Suns probably have a division
the Suns
game
have
left
one
too.
extra game against the Lakers because they're playing the Lakers 5 times this season.
Hard game. Okay,
which is kind of fascinating. So if the Suns beat the Lakers, if they end up tying with the Clippers at the end of the season, no matter what, the Suns will maintain the 6 seed or 7 seed. And if you're wondering why this is important, it's because the first play-in game is against the Clippers, and the Suns will have home court advantage if they have the higher seed. So it's important.
Okay, so you're saying, but by the way, the Clippers are about to tip off against the Blazers, a team that's right behind them. Mm-hmm. And technically, I suppose, could still pass them. Yeah, they're only a game and a half by the Clippers, but the Blazers can't really pass us at this point. There's like 6 games left, and they're 4 games back. That would be very difficult. Those 2 teams are about to tip off in 20 minutes. We won't know the results of that before you hear this. But so if the Clippers... Okay, walk me through what needs to happen again. The
Clippers can tie the Suns' division record by beating Sacramento and Golden State.
Here's how I want to know it.
They'd
so
be 10-6.
Okay.
We'd be 10-6 as well. So the Suns, all they have to do is beat the Lakers.
There's 6 games left for us. And
technically the Clippers could just pass the Suns' record. They could just do that. And then they're going to be but if they're tied, this is where these tiebreakers fall into play.
So there's 6 games left for us. There's 7 games left for the Clippers. Let's say the Suns and the Clippers are 2.5 games back. So if the Suns go, as an example, 3-3.
Yeah.
So if the Suns go 3-3 and the Clippers go 6, they would have to go 6-1 in that case in order to tie
pass
us?
the Suns?
Oh,
No,
fuck.
4
Wait.
4
5
and 2.
and 2?
Right? Yeah, 5 and 2, yeah.
Okay. This is just one example of something that could happen. If the Suns went 3-3, the Clippers went 5-2, and both 2 of the Clippers' 5 wins were against Golden State and Sacramento, and one of the Suns' 3 losses was against the Lakers. I'm making this more complicated than it needs to be.
Then technically the Clippers would have the tiebreaker on the Suns.
In that case, the
record.
Clippers would have the tiebreaker.
The math on the wins isn't quite right, I think, but you get the point is if the Suns tie the Clippers at the end of the season, they have to beat the Lakers to guarantee that they own the tiebreaker. They still could own the tiebreaker, though, if the Clippers just lose to either Sacramento or Golden State, which they won't lose to Sacramento, I don't think. But Golden State is possible. Steph is supposedly coming back soon, so that could happen.
Yeah, I didn't
Weird
even realize that
situation there.
Sacramento is now 19-57.
Yeah.
I knew they were bad. Obviously, I
worst,
didn't realize they were literally 15th in the conference.
Hi, this is Alex Kantrowitz. I'm the host of Big Technology Podcast, a longtime reporter and an on-air contributor to CNBC. And if you're like me, you're trying to figure out how artificial intelligence is changing the business world and our lives. So each week on Big Technology, I bring on key actors from companies building AI tech and outsiders trying to influence it, asking where this is all going. They come from places like NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon, and plenty more. So if you want to be smart with your wallet, your career choices, in meetings with your colleagues, and at dinner parties, listen to Big Technology Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Amari Stoudemire was inducted, or will be inducted, to the Basketball Hall of Fame. That was announced today by Shams Charania, along with a group of other basketball players, including Doc Rivers, which I thought was interesting, being that he's still coaching in the NBA. Amari Stoudemire, of course, played his first 8 seasons with the Suns.
8 seasons.
And, of course, won Rookie of the Year, had MVP votes on the Suns, made All-NBA teams, made All-Star teams, and had his best years in Phoenix, although he had one really great year in New York after that. Was never quite the same. Was, of course, amazing. One of the big reasons I think that both of us are Suns fans.
1,000%.
In his time in Phoenix. And it's really cool to see him make the team.
To this day, maybe the most electric power forward in a true sense of the word power forward. Although he did play some center for the Suns. Obviously, started at center for a couple seasons under D'Antoni. But I think maybe is still better remembered as a power forward. I'm not really sure. One of the best I've ever seen.
And Giannis, kind of, right? Like he just sort of was doing the Giannis thing before Giannis. Of course, differently.
Yeah, he was a Giannis prototype. It's funny because I think people have always referred to KG as a bit of a Giannis prototype, and I think that's definitely true. Mm-hmm. Amari is weird because there was a clear line from Amari to then Blake Griffin in the early 2010s of the guy who took the mantle from doing what Amari was obviously doing, and then Blake Griffin, as his athleticism started to wane, became a 3-point shooter, which Amari could never do. Since then, I'm not sure there's been another guy exactly in their lineage. I guess you could say Giannis. I suppose that would
Amari
work.
never tried to shoot.
I mean, Giannis is a good jump. Giannis is kind of a good mid-range jump shooter now, but it's still not a huge part of his game compared to Amari in his prime, where it really felt kind of like 50-50. He was going to dunk in your face or just hit you with the one jab step and then
the face up,
and then knock it down face up. The big thing about Amari, and this is where I really feel the need to defend him. First of all, we were just you and I were just talking about Amari recently when I was in town because we went to 3 Suns games. At one of the Suns games, Steve Nash was there. He was sitting courtside across from us. At another Suns game, Shawn Marion was there. I may have flipped the order on those. It may have been Marion at the first game, Nash at the second game, and then I was saying, I really hope Amari will be at the third game randomly. That would be fun to complete the trifecta. But he unfortunately was not there. The reason I feel so compelled to defend Amari, as people are going to come after him and say, oh, the NBA Hall of Fame is so easy to get into, it's the Hall of Very Good, whatever, yada, yada, is Amari's peak, those things might be true, that it's easier to get into than, say, the Baseball Hall of Fame, where it's super difficult. Yeah. But Amari's peak is very understated by the greater NBA community because he happened to be peaking at a time when there were 3 other absolute all-time greats. I mean, that was such an amazing time for the power forward position. Amari peaked when Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, and Dirk Nowitzki were all MVPs, all MVP candidates at the very least. And in spite of that, he was a not just 6-time All-Star, which 6-time All-Star gets that like historically gets you borderline. He was a 5-time All-NBA first or second team. Mm-hmm. So 5 years, if you consider that his peak, where he was essentially classified as a top 10 player in the NBA, even though the other guys he had to compete with for those spots were, again, Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, Dirk Nowitzki, and in the later years, LeBron James and Kevin Durant, right? 5-time All-NBA, first or second team, absolutely is enough to get you in the Hall of Fame. Here's an example. Reggie Miller was a 3-time All-NBA third team, and he's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and he's thought of as one of the greats, yeah.
Yeah, and he's thought of as one of the greats, and maybe that's just because like he set the 3-point record before Steph came and obliterated it 20 years later. But like, if Reggie at his best was a top 15 player in the NBA for a couple years, maybe this is the problem with the Hall of Fame is you set precedents. But like, of course, Amari then has to be a Hall of Famer because his peak was far better.
Not only did he have his peak at the same time as those guys, Tim Duncan and Dirk Nowitzki, he also eliminated them in the playoffs. You know, the Suns played the Dallas Mavericks. I think it was 05-06 or 04-05. I forget which season. And then, of course, famously defeating Tim Duncan in the 09-10 season. Amari had some of his best games in the playoffs against Tim Duncan. Was so fast, and that was a tough thing for Tim Duncan to really deal with.
I'll pull it up right now. In the 05 Western Conference Finals, which of course the Suns lost, but okay, it was still the Western Conference Finals. He actually played San Antonio and Dallas that year because we played Dallas in the second round. Mm-hmm. So I've got the stats right here. Second round against Dallas. Amari is a 22-year-old, mind you. He's a 22-year-old, okay? He's younger than Oso Ighodaro. And he puts up 29 points and 12 and a half rebounds, 2 blocks a game against Dallas. That's the second round where they won. Mm-hmm. And then in the Western Conference Finals against San Antonio, okay, they lose. But again, a 22-year-old averaged 37 points and 10 rebounds a game against MVP Tim Duncan. Like, his peak was ridiculous. We have not seen many, and this is why it's so unfortunate. If Amari just didn't have all the injuries and he could just eke out, 1 or 2 more All-Star appearances, like reserve All-Star appearances with the Knicks in like 2014 or whatever, and his career extended like a few more years, I think this would be a no-brainer for people because they would look at his resume and they would immediately see like, 8, 9-time All-Star, whatever. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because it's a 6-time All-Star, people feel like it's borderline, and I get it. He didn't play the same number of years as some other guys going into the Hall of Fame, but his peak was electric.
I do think he's helped by just having that one season in New York, so those Knicks fans still kind of love him.
It's possible. Having the second,
Timothy Chalamet has his jersey, like
the second fan base. Yeah,
yeah. It actually, and not only having a second fan base, but the biggest city in the entire country was behind him, and one that gets a ton of media. And they were pretty good. That Knicks team They were okay. They were good. They were not as good as the Suns teams. Obviously, the Suns teams were really, really great. But they had a few years where they put it together. That first year, he was an MVP candidate. Didn't get a ton of votes, but he was an MVP candidate that first year he went to New York, and then they added Carmelo Anthony, and then he just dealt with so many injuries after that he never quite put it together in the same way.
They continued to be. They actually became a better team when Melo got there. Of course, Melo was a great player, flaws of his own, but like when they had the Melo and Stat and Tyson Chandler configuration Knicks. I think Tyson Chandler was there at that point.
He was, yeah.
That's when they went to, I don't know if they made the Eastern Conference Finals because I know the Heat were always there. They at least made the second round against like the Pacers, the Paul George, Roy Hibbert Pacers teams. Like they were good teams in the low 50s wins.
They lost to the Pacers. Yeah, that was the year the Pacers went to the conference finals.
Yeah, I think Miami. That was the year Amari punched the fire extinguisher in the playoffs.
I believe you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that positively or negatively affected his Hall of Fame chances?
Yeah, I'm going to say that I forgot about it, so that's probably helpful for him until you brought it up just now. What's your biggest memory of Amari?
There's so many. The dunk on Tolliver, Anthony Tolliver, of course, with the elevates and detonates for Tom Leander, just because that's become such an iconic moment in kind of the Suns vernacular, even though that was just a regular season game where the Warriors were a team that kind of sucked, you know, and it was just like the Suns were just beating up on a team that kind of sucks. Rookie Steph Curry, Monte Ellis doing the Jalen Green thing. And then Amari just destroys Anthony Tolliver, and it's so good, man. But he had so many good ones. That's the crazy thing about Amari, right? The beauty of the poster dunk is that not only does Amari get to live on, but now I get to remember other random role players who he dunked on 15 years later. I remember Jeff Foster's name, and there's no reason that I should other than the fact that one time Amari was playing the Pacers and just took the like sweeping one-hand tomahawk yammed on him. And this was like an older version of Amari. I remember he was like, 29, 30 or whatever, but he still had that in him. So yeah, so many good ones with him.
One of the nice things about these guys,
Richard Jefferson, I think that one was in the playoffs, had a great dunk on Richard Jefferson.
Yes, was that 2010?
I think it was in 2010. Maybe the series might have been the regular season though. Maybe it wasn't the playoffs. I can't.
Well, I'll say
anymore.
that the 2010 playoffs, of course, is one of the most memorable Suns moments that I remember. I think it's a similar thing, not quite as similar to the Suns this year, but the Suns were going into that 2010 season with lowered expectations because Steve Nash was 36 or 37, whatever he was. And the team was, not quite what they were before. Amari Stoudemire was about to be a free agent. There was all these things that could really add up to them not doing as well as they did in the playoffs, but they made the conference finals anyway. And of course was capped off. I think the crowning achievement of that season was sweeping the Spurs after all of the trouble the Spurs gave them previously. Now, Amari played well, 23, 29 points, but did have one game with only 7 points in that series, but was a positive throughout that. And, they won because of the entire team really coming together and really putting it together against the Spurs. But that is still one of my favorite memories. And it, of course, includes Amari, even if it wasn't necessarily him leading the team in all of those games. For somehow Goran Dragic did in one of them. But yeah.
This is not fair to Amari, but just looking at his profile page here, it just flabbergasts anyone. The fact that this guy entered the NBA in 2002, 2003, one season before LeBron James, and his last year was 2016, and LeBron is still here 10 years later.
It's really incredible.
Incredible, man.
The
amount of stories that guy has and the amount of guys he's played against is wild.
I mean,
the amount of role players who he's going to keep alive, we're going to continue talking about.
We talked about LeBron going against Rasheed Wallace. Well, you were here in person in the playoffs, and now LeBron is, going to be in the playoffs against, who knows, Anthony Edwards? I don't know who they're going to play, but yeah, crazy. All right, you got anything else before we go? Congratulations to Amari, by the way. Just happy for him. It's going to be a cool moment for Suns fans to see that.
Do you have any thoughts on Doc Rivers going in the Hall?
I mean, I'd say he deserves it. I think winning a single title with Boston is like worth winning like 5 titles with any other team as far as the way the media treats you, because of just how that works.
He also was a player.
But that's the thing I was going to say. He was a great player.
Yeah.
He was good in the NBA for a long time. So
he's a one-time All-Star who played like 12 seasons in the NBA, was a starting point guard the vast majority of his career. And granted, like obviously you don't make the Hall by yourself with that resume, but
20 plus years of coaching too.
When you do that and then also do 20 plus years of coaching, like I get it. I also think Doc is kind of an idiot when it comes to coaching, especially in the modern NBA.
The game's passed him by, yeah.
But like, yeah, I mean, the NBA, the basketball, I should call it the Basketball Hall of Fame because that's what it is. The Basketball Hall of Fame is easier to get into, and he has the resume for it. I'm sorry, he just does.
You
haven't been to the Basketball Hall of Fame, correct?
I
went for the first time last year.
People will remember Doc Rivers. That's just a guy people will remember. And, part of it is, like I said, because he won with Boston. It's an important thing to do. I think you could ask a lot of NBA fans right now to name OKC's coach, and a lot of them would struggle to do it. But I bet they could name who was the coach of the Kevin Garnett Celtics champion team. And, there's something about that. It's called the Hall of Fame for a reason. He's a very famous coach. All right. That's all I got. You got anything else?
I think that's it.
we're going to have to figure out a Patreon podcast at some point this week. We were thrown off a little bit by Sam traveled back to New York, so this podcast coming a little later in the week than we normally do, but we'll get one out sometime in the next few days. So if you want to hear that, patreon.com/thetimeline. Really, we just need to see this team get healthy and play a little bit better before the end of the season and hold on to that 7 seed so we could see a home game. But yeah, thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back pretty soon.
Hi, this is Alex Kantrowitz. I'm the host of Big Technology Podcast, a longtime reporter and an on-air contributor to CNBC. And if you're like me, you're trying to figure out how artificial intelligence is changing the business world and our lives. So each week on Big Technology, I bring on key actors from companies building AI tech and outsiders trying to influence it, asking where this is all going. They come from places like NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon, and plenty more. So if you want to be smart with your wallet, your career choices, in meetings with your colleagues, and at dinner parties, listen to Big Technology Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.